Sup gamers, today we're going to be watching the first Descendant IGN review. I actually have my own thoughts about the game as well. I'd have to say the game itself is like 6.5 out of 10. No. 7 out of 10. And I'll tell you why while we go through this video. So let's get to it. See what they think. What's their hot take? Explain your hot take.
With so many live service games vying for your attention, the first Descendant feels like it was focus group tested to please as many people as possible, and it's fated for mediocrity as a result. This unabashedly
also known
derivative
as
shooter
good
borrows
graphics,
ideas from better
hot
games,
waifus,
covers them in a thick layer of
and
free-to-play annoyances, then pads the whole thing out with mind-numbingly repetitive missions just in case you were still managing
it
to
is
have
very
fun.
mind-numbing.
That's unfortunate, because underneath all that cheap wood and crumbling drywall is a really strong foundation, with entertaining gunplay and charismatic characters I'd like to get to know better.
Ladder's
the first Descendant is by no means the first.
The ladder is right, but like, there's not much depth to the gameplay itself. It's more of like what you choose for the mods and the Descendants, and you just kind of try to specialize what they have, like their perks. For instance, Bunny, you would use skill range, you would reduce cooldown, and what else was there? Skill power. You basically choose like technicals for every single Descendant, and the guns themselves, it's like there's not much difference between. There's like types of weapons, but so far I haven't noticed them doing any like special ability or anything, so I can't really agree with that one. Whoops, did I just move something? I did. I'll fix it later.
Live service game to come out of the oven half-baked, so there's always a chance updates will make it more palatable in the months and years to come, but it's off to an underwhelming start.
Oh, how the weak
Oh.
humans truly are foolish.
I will say my favorite weapons are a submachine gun
Nexon's take
and
on a
a
multiplayer
pistol.
third-person shooter plays in some of the same spaces as Genshin Impact, complete with cool-looking
How dare you
characters
say
to
that.
unlock and countless currencies and materials to grind for, all of which can
It's
be
closer to
bypassed if you're willing
Warframe.
to simply cough up your hard-earned cash. And like
closer
some of its
to
polished
Warframe.
contemporaries, there's a pretty decent game here in spite of a UI that requires a PhD in RPG hogwash to decipher, and an irritating monetization model. Running around with friends while shooting enemies and unleashing interesting supernatural abilities upon alien armies is an undeniably good time, and the deep RPG mechanics and loot systems are a spreadsheet-loving nerd's dream. It's also a fairly pretty game that feels a lot more premium.
It's a little
than one might
confusing. The mod
expect,
system's
even
a
with
little
the occasional
confusing.
frame rate dip or crash.
You have to take
That
time
said,
and read
its
each one.
monetization model is every bit as eyebrow-raising as it sounds. The story and dialogue is
I wish the
laughably
icons,
bad,
like,
and
made
much
it a
of the
bit easier,
campaign is
but
packed with filler that can be a real snooze.
it only does for some, like the magazine one.
I've spent the vast majority of my 120 hours of playtime
Did you know the
dashing
accuracy
around
one
small
looks more
hub
like a
areas,
recoil?
completing repetitive chores
Or
in
a
between
ricochet?
much more
Not
substantial
recoil.
missions and boss battles.
The recoil
against
one looks
robotic
like the
kaiju.
ricochet,
Those self-contained missions
but there
and
is no
bosses
ricochet,
are
but it
exactly
looks
the
like
kind
that.
of thing I hope for in an action-packed
The boss
cooperative
fights are
game. Some
nice.
seriously
They're
awesome
okay.
combat, interesting enemies to take down, and a loot system that had
You know what the
regular
boss fights actually kind of remind me of? They kind of make me think of like The Division for how often you have to sponge against them. But they do have like the feel of Destiny where like there is mechanics you have to go through. So I think that's
trying
pretty
out
cool.
The latest shiny weapon I pulled from some schmuck's corpse.
Although I don't
That
like
said,
Destiny
even
itself,
these
so
more enjoyable bits weren't without major
can you do?
irritations, like how nearly every boss has multiple
Maybe if they
layers
changed
of
it to hot
shielding that have
waifus.
to be peeled off before they can be damaged, most of which respawn multiple times or heal if you take too long to remove them. A few even have shields on top of their shields, so you're constantly
Yo,
stopping
you
what
got
you're
those
doing
shield
to shoot
stack?
a tiny target and remove a protective barrier, only to find
me that
yourself
shield stack,
staring at
bro.
another one seconds later.
A lot of the fights are difficult if you play solo.
But those are still bright spots compared to the much more numerous missions you're expected to do.
It's like 40%
in between
of the
every
fights are
story
difficult.
beat, which have you grapple hooking across open world areas to complete
At least if you gotta use
monotonous
Bunny.
errands. These include a little mini game where you have to collect items from fallen enemies,
Bunny
and
is like
deposit
the
them into a
attack
collection
sub.
bin, an escort quest where you have to follow a drone around an area slowly while fighting small waves of baddies, and several variations of missions where you're just standing in a circle as you keep it
I hate
clear
those
of foes.
missions as
Not only
Bunny.
do most of these involve a whole lot of waiting around for enemies to spawn, but you'll replay them in every new area until they
Yeah.
are both tiresome
There's no difference.
and woefully predictable. There are so many missions like these, and it adds hours upon hours to a roughly 30-hour campaign that would probably be a quarter as long if they just went straight to the stuff that's
I don't really
actually
care about
worth
the
playing.
campaign itself, to be honest. I've been skipping the story. Except for this part. I thought that was pretty cool.
Even if you can forgive the often trite missions, the story itself is consistently a waste of time and absolutely not worth paying attention to. Absolutely brimming with nonsensical sci-fi babble like dimensional walls, inverted data codes,
Sci-fi
and
BS.
unleashing arcade. It's one of the sillier stories I've seen in a while, and I play Destiny. Most of the dialogue is absolutely atrocious. At one point, I burst out laughing when a guy said this.
Kickoff will engulf increase. The roars of the Vulgus will fill this land with fear.
And they keep making me talk to this annoying little brat. It's truly
Oh, I hate that guy.
heinous stuff.
I'd watch what you're saying, Glay. I carried out my side of the operation.
I dislike him.
perfectly.
But that's what
Thankfully,
makes
the
him a
most
good
interesting
character.
characters are those you can unlock and play as. That includes the unflappable electric speedster Bunny, who is my personal favorite, and
Yeah,
the
of course it is.
sarcastic
Is
and
it because of the
smarmy
latex suit?
grenade-chucking soldier Lepic. Some of the cast do still
I
seem
like
a
her.
bit shallow, largely because you only
I like
get a
the
little
default.
backstory and
I wanna
character
get the Black
development
Rose
for
outfit
most of
for
them,
her,
but hearing them
but I don't
cheer
spend
as you
money, so
blast
that's a
monsters
problem.
to bits and seeing their charming animations, which clearly had more effort put into them than those of the NPCs, is quite nice. Only one of these playable characters has an actual quest line associated with them right now.
Yeah,
with
you mean
more
Bunny?
planned for the future. But that story
Oh,
is
no.
one of the
Wait.
better threads currently
They
available.
mean
So
Freyna.
here's hoping they're quick to add more on that
Wait,
front.
that's wrong.
Oh, my
They have
beloved
two
daughter,
characters.
Daya.
3
on a
characters
little
that's in the
longer.
story.
Your mom will save you
Actually,
no matter
no.
what.
There's multiple characters in the story, but the
Actually,
only one that I know
learning
of a
to play
quest
as them
line
is great
separate
too.
from
One
everyone
character might
is
control
Bunny.
the battlefield with explosive AoE attacks, while another covers enemies in devastating ice-based debuffs. Bunny does insane DPS by running around as much as possible to
Running
generate
at the
electrical
speed of
energy,
sound.
then unleashes it in powerful blasts. Since each of these characters has their own style of play, switching between them offers
don't
a
even really
markedly
need a shield, you
different
just jump
experience,
on
like
top
how
of them.
Ajax, a heavy tank with protective
And
abilities,
if it's a
is all
slightly
about
stronger, you
standing
jump
your
on
ground
top while
instead.
doing melee.
Most games with playable characters as
And
its
it's like,
main
it's
chase
over.
live or die by how compelling those unlockable avatars are, and the first Descendant is loaded with distinctive options that
I remember
are
when the
alluring to
shotgun would do
obtain.
so much damage against those guys with the yellow bars. But later on, it's
Unfortunately,
like,
aside
nope, you
from the
can't do
first
that
couple
anymore.
characters you unlock in the opening hours, the process of accessing the rest is dreadfully painful unless you're willing to open your pocketbook. In the name of science, I decided to really dial in and see how much effort it would take to unlock one specific character from start to finish without spending any real money. After 10 hours of repetitive grinding for the required materials, a whopping 8 of which was spent replaying a single mission trying to get one specific key item to drop, and then 20
That's
more
how I
hours of
wondered
waiting
about
for
Freyna.
arbitrary time gates to pass, the
Oh.
experience had nearly broken me. I've got to admit, when
Yeah,
the
that's why I'm not
alternative
doing
to
that.
all of this mindless, soul-destroying
I want
grinding and
Freyna, but I'm not
time
doing
gating is
that.
to simply pay $10, it becomes a pretty appealing proposition to cough up the dough. And that's the problem.
I mean, you
Nexon
get like
has
$10 in like
intentionally
half an
propped up
hour.
obtuse, overly grindy systems that feel terrible, seemingly just to make it more enticing to pay money. And when there are already paid season passes and a whole slew of optional cosmetics that can only be unlocked with money, did it really need to throw in what is essentially an even more grindy version of Warframe's character unlock system?
Oh, so he does
just
know
to
what
annoy
Warframe
me into
is.
paying more on top
Alright.
of that? Either way, trying to unlock a single character for free was an absolutely excruciating experience that made me feel a whole lot worse about the first Descendant, despite mostly enjoying the actual gameplay.
Do as I say, if you want to live.
Similarly, the weapons,
No.
equipment, and upgrades you earn while shotgunning your way through levels are awesome. Loot drops constantly, Most weapons feel distinct and satisfying to play with, and watching the
I
numbers
hate having
go
to
up
go
as
to
you
my
modify
inventory
and
so
upgrade every
often.
new toy in your arsenal makes the first Descendant hard to put
I think
down,
they need to boost the
until
inventory
it forces
limit.
you into about 15 separate menus to juggle dozens of materials and so many different systems that you might want to keep your inhaler at the ready. This kind of thing is pretty typical for looter shooters, granted, but even by the already
It's like you have to look at your
gag-inducing
inventory
standards of the
after
genre,
almost every
this one's
mission. It
particularly
sucks.
obnoxious to learn, especially since the
Like, you play
tutorial
10 minutes and
robot
then you
who
spend
shows the
another,
ropes
like,
in the
5
social area
minutes
explains
sorting your
things
loot.
to you in a series of
It
texts that pass
sucks.
by quickly enough to challenge your speed reading skills. Worse yet, these brutally obtuse systems have likewise been given the same arbitrary barriers as weapons, with
Yeah,
various
it's not
currencies and
simplistic
components to craft that can be made a whole lot less annoying if you just pay the piper.
Pay money and we'll make it easier for
The
you,
first
sir.
Descendant has all the building blocks of a fantastic looter shooter, but they're buried
This is why
under a
everyone
pile
plays
of
once human
monotonous
instead,
quests,
even
a
though it's
terrible story,
complicated.
and an infuriating
Because there's
free-to-play
no
model
pay
that has influenced
to,
its
make
game
it
design
easier.
in the worst possible way. In its best moments, blasting aliens apart with both fireballs and a satisfying arsenal of weapons makes for a really good time. But at least an equal portion of my time was spent battling perplexing design decisions that tested the limits of my abundant patience. Like its peers, future updates
Well, that's
could
nice that
evolve
you have
this live
abundant
service into
patience.
a much more consistently enjoyable way
I'm not
to
very
spend
patient
time
at all.
with friends. But for now, it misses the mark too often
5.
to make its grind feel
Not
worthwhile.
bad.
For some recent live service
that's actually pretty
alternatives,
valid.
check out our reviews of Zenless
Personally,
Zone
with
Zero
what
or
he's saying, what he's been saying makes it sound more like a 6 or 7. But I mean, at the same time, I guess he has been complaining more so than not. So yeah, I guess 5 makes sense. But yeah, I don't know what you guys think about the first Descendant. Personally, like I said, mine's like 7, maybe 6.5. It's like in between there. It's like 6 to 7, right? That's mine. IGN's is 5. What's your guys's? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you guys later.